BBC News. Hello, I'm Jerry Smith. Police in Britain have begun a murder investigation after a lorry was discovered overnight with 39 people dead inside. The driver, a 25-year-old man from Northern Ireland, has been arrested. Britain's Prime Minister Boris Johnson said he was appalled by the tragic incident. Andy Moore has the details.
The grim discovery was made early this morning in the back of a lorry at an industrial park in Grays. Forensics officers are working at the scene. Police say identifying the bodies will be a long and complicated operation. The lorry came from Bulgaria, but the people who died on board are unlikely to be from Europe. 39 people were pronounced dead at the scene. Early indications suggest 38 are adults. One was a teenager.
A convoy of Russian military police has arrived in the border city of Kobani in northeastern Syria as a deal agreed between Russia and Turkey is implemented. The military police are intended to help facilitate the complete withdrawal of Kurdish fighters and their weapons to 30 kilometres from the border. The deal, agreed on Tuesday between President Putin and his Turkish counterpart, gave the Kurds 150 hours to complete the pullout. The NATO chief, Jens Stoltenberg, has said the ceasefire in northeastern Syria should serve as a basis to achieve a political settlement across the whole country.
What we have seen over the last days is encouraging because it shows that it is possible to move towards a political settlement, a political solution. The first requirement for having a political solution is to stop the violence, is to stop the fighting, and what we have seen is at least some reduction, some significant reduction in violence and fighting.
Lebanese soldiers are trying to reopen main roads closed by anti-government protesters in recent days. Our Arab Affairs editor Sebastian Usher reports.
The Lebanese protests are entering their seventh day. They've brought much of the country to a standstill. Until now, they've been characterised by fun and good humour, though the seriousness of the country's plight that's brought hundreds of thousands onto the streets has been the focus. Now the army is moving in to try to reopen roads blocked by the protesters. The Prime Minister, Saad Hariri, has told the army not to use force, but scuffles have already broken out in several areas as protesters refuse to move as the army comes in. Many Lebanese are holding their breath that the situation remains peaceful and their demands for genuine reform do not get hijacked by any violence.
The head of the Maronite Christian Church in Lebanon has given his support for the protests. The patriarch has called for a new cabinet. The UN Refugee Agency says a man has set himself on fire outside the organisation's headquarters in the Swiss city of Geneva. It added the man was alive and had been taken to hospital. Police say the man is a Syrian Kurd living in Germany. You're listening to World News from the BBC. Indonesia's President Joko Widodo has unveiled his new cabinet, which includes a controversial choice for Defence Minister, his main rival, Prabowo Subianto. As leader of the largest opposition party, Mr Prabowo's inclusion will boost government support in Parliament and could make it easier to push through legislation. But the former army general, who used to head Indonesia's special forces, has been accused of human rights abuses. There's been cautious support in Europe to granting Britain more time to approve the agreement on leaving the EU. One possibility is an extension lasting until the end of January, unless the withdrawal agreement passes in Parliament before that. Ireland has come out in support of the plan, but Germany and especially France say they would prefer a shorter arrangement. From Brussels, Kevin Connolly reports.
The easiest option remains to settle on January the 31st, with a proviso that Brexit could happen earlier, as soon, in fact, as the necessary legislation can be passed at Westminster and then endorsed by the European Parliament. The Irish Prime Minister Leo Varadkar has become the first EU leader to publicly endorse that plan. The ambassadors of the EU27 will meet in Brussels to test the strength of feeling behind that plan a little later.
At the start of the first ever Russia-Africa summit, President Putin has said trade with Africa could be at least doubled in the next 4 to 5 years. He said Russia currently exports $25 billion worth of food and $15 billion of arms to Africa. Moscow has been seeking to restore its influence on the continent, which has waned since the Cold War. The Kenyan government has ordered civil servants to wear locally made clothes on Fridays and public holidays. The aim is to boost the country's manufacturing industry, a key policy of President Uhuru Kenyatta. And those are the latest stories from BBC News.